All right. Hey there, friend. How are you today? Um, Let me know if you're watching live or if this is the replay. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And we are still in our month of November, which we're talking about, or the focus is on gratitude. So today's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can become more gracious. So when I think about gracious and having grace, obviously it means a little bit more, when you're a Christian, when you're a believer, but I'm not going to talk that route today. So I'm talking about graciousness as a characteristics, as a whoa, I can't speak today, as a characteristic that I think is so important in all of our dealings with other humans, right? Especially, it's been a tumultuous, a chaotic week, right? If you're like into the political scene or if you're just like hearing about it, things are just a little bit crazy and the world has never been more divided. And I think we just need to be more gracious with each other and realize that we're not all going to vote the same way, think the same way, believe the same way, and that's okay. But somewhere along the line, I think we just lost that graciousness. So, um, the importance of graciousness, obviously, there's many aspects um, of what it means to you, but I think, like I just touched on, it's just having consideration for your fellow human, um, considering their feelings and not being hurtful, not making them feel uncomfortable, just taking into account somebody else's needs, maybe how you can do something for them, right? And so our natural instinct is we're all just so busy and we just tend to just withdraw. But maybe you have a neighbor who maybe has been isolated, maybe their family is across the country and they haven't seen anybody, due to COVID, and they're just lonely. So maybe you just graciously maybe invite them over or just go visit them or just go hang out on their porch, whatever um, you want to do. It's just considering the needs of others. I can remember working in lower Manhattan way back. I lived in New York and I would take the train, the ferry, and sometimes another train, but most of the time I would just walk. And there would be people, I remember like pregnant ladies getting on, elderly or much older people, and I would see a lot of young people just not getting up to give them their seat. And like I was just not brought up that way. So to me, that's like graciousness. That's being considerate and kind and manners and whatever you want to call it, um, is just looking out for our fellow human beings. So another aspect of graciousness, I think, is humility, knowing when to say you're sorry, I was wrong. Do you forgive me? My gosh, we can go in forgiveness would be like a whole other topic. But just the humility to not be bragging all the time, um, about whether, your job, the car you drive, like not having that air about you. Um, Yeah, so humility, big thing, right? Empathy again is, and this is all tying into each other. Empathy is having the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So you realize when somebody else is in pain, somebody else is embarrassed, somebody else is sad, um, and you're able to put yourself in their shoes and hopefully allow them to save face. So you don't want to point out something obvious, maybe. Um, like, hey, you've got like, I don't know, food stuck between your teeth. Like, you don't want to say that loudly in front of a whole room. You just maybe want to pull them off to the side. Um, there's this great meme that goes around, and I'm sure some of you have seen it, about not calling out somebody else's fault, but rather just fixing their crown, right? Because we've got this crown on our head, and instead of like, telling somebody outright you're wrong, you did that wrong, blah 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 blah, you just gently fix their crown. So there's always like there's a way of doing it. So being thoughtful, right? Another characteristic, somebody who's gracious is careful about how they treat others. They're often focused and think kindly about others. Another example, let's see, I wrote some things down. Dropping something and picking it up for somebody so they don't have to bend. And again, I've taught my children to do this. Especially my boys, hold open the door for other people. Carry something. Don't let, a person who is older than you, carry something heavy. Just be gracious, kind, and thoughtful. Be welcoming. Welcoming is another characteristic. You you make an effort to say even introduce, like if you have one friend and there's a bunch of other people that come over and you know them, but your friend it doesn't, you be very welcoming and you introduce them and you edify them. So like, not just like, hey Sue, this is John. It's, Sue, you've got to meet my friend John. He's an amazing father. He's an amazing, he's one of my employees. He does great. He's very responsible. John, meet Sue. You just edify the other person. So they get a hint about what that other person is like beforehand. You build them up. So be poised. A person who is gracious is not easily ruffled or visibly affected or triggered. Like, I think too many of us are triggered these days and we take offense like right away. But if you're poised in these difficult situations, that would be gracious, right? So you have good posture and you're not easily going to blow off some steam or some anger. You're able to like just like, yeah, let it roll off your shoulders and realize that it's really probably it's never about you. It's always about what that other person is going through. So I think being gracious is just a very noble way to live your life. And again, it ties into gratitude because if you're grateful for everything you've got going on and you're not looking at the stuff you don't have, but rather, again, grateful for what you do have, you tend to have an easier air about you and you're not or shouldn't be that easily triggered or annoyed by the slightest little thing, and you tend to let things just roll off your shoulders, right, and not take offense. So let me see if there's any comments. Okay, I don't see anybody here. So that is this week's uh, little tiny video on becoming gracious and how we can have just more gratitude towards our fellow human. Especially 2020 has been rough for a lot of us, even if we're not visibly saying it or showing the effects of 2020. I'm sure, we're all dealing with our stress from the year. Um, Taking care of yourself, be gracious to yourself. Okay, this is something I should have touched on. So I'm not just saying be gracious for other people, but be gracious even for yourself with our cleanse, balance, build system. Treat yourself well. Be grateful for your body. Be grateful for your health. And when you have that viewpoint, even about yourself, that self love, you're going to treat your body differently. You're going to treat it better. You're going to treat it with honor and respect and care. And I say this in my course to my clients. I have a thing like, if you're, and again, this is if you're not a believer, it's cool, but if you're a believer, you're a daughter of the Most High, right? The King of Kings. That makes you a princess. You're royalty, basically. So imagine the Queen of England just comes over and spends the night at your house. Okay, you got to work with me on this one. Um, she comes over, and are you going to treat her just like anybody else? Like in the morning, are you going to slide her a bowl of Lucky Charms and say, "Here you go, Liz"? Or are you going to be like, "Oh my gosh, let me make her like this healthy breakfast. I'll make her an omelet and I'll serve some fruit and fresh squeezed orange juice"? You get the point, right? So you're going to treat royalty a little differently than you would. Um, I mean, you shouldn't, but now inclination is to treat royalty better, right? So when you view yourself as royalty and the princess or the prince, the queen or the king that you are, your mind shift switches. Like there's a little shift and like, oh, well then let me carry myself a little bit differently. I'm more poised, I'm more gracious, and I'm grateful, and I then treat myself better with supplements and exercise. And it all ties into each other, guys. You're probably looking at this video going, this is a wellness group. Why are we talking about this stuff? But it just all ties in, right? It's a whole body approach, a whole person approach to what we put into our body is then becomes like the root of what comes out. So the fruit, right, has to do with the root. So Again, treating yourself well is key. So there you go. That is your Tuesday video. And if you have any questions or comments, drop them below. And I will see you next week, my friend.